Welcome to the Convergence Podcast. I'm your host, Ashok Shivanan.
Ashok, I love winning. Do you love winning?
I didn't grow up as a kid who loved winning. I was very happy to be there. And I think as a result of working closer with you and some other folks, I've kind of developed this thing where I've got a lot more of a competitive edge. On this show, we'll deconstruct the best practices, principles, and the underlying philosophies behind the most engaged product teams who ship the most successful products. This is what teams are made of. On this episode, I am joined once again by Bailey O'Shea. Bailey is the head of product at Integral, and Bailey and I get to work together with shipping some amazing products with our clients in artificial intelligence, cloud, web, and mobile, as well as helping engage their teams so that they are building some delightful products for delighted customers. Bailey leads the team of player coaches at Integral on their human-centered design and lean product teams. And prior to that, she worked in the go-to-market in the automotive industry in marketing, as well as at an innovation lab at General Motors, where she conducted experiments for the future of automotive retail alongside the likes of IDEO. A few weeks ago, Bailey and I did an episode about the 9 critical conversations you might be forgetting to have on your product team. We're often brought in to help improve the engagement levels and the productivity and performance of a product team, and have found that one of those 9 conversations are something that we are oftentimes going back and refactoring in to align the teams. That episode did really well amongst our audience, and we've been asked for more depth on each of them. And so we have decided to put out this series, and this is going to be number 2 of the 9 conversations, where we talk about how will we win? How is it that the product is going to be in service of the business goals that justified it in the first place, and how to align your team there. If you haven't checked out the episode on the 9 crucial conversations, make sure to go check that out so you hear all 9. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast so that you are kept up to speed on the remainder of the series. Hope you enjoyed this chat with Bailey and I. Welcome back, Bailey.
Thanks. Good to be back.
We are talking about conversations that product teams oftentimes forget to have. And the second conversation is, how will we win? Where to play and how to win are the 2 elements of strategy. And I think there's a lot around the where that we talked about in the first conversation. We're going to get to probably later in the who part, in terms of like really niching down your customer segment. But talk to us about the how part.
Yeah. So when you think about how will we win, I love to ask the question of how do we know when we're winning? Because ultimately that gets to what is the indicator and the measure that we're going to determine and start making decisions by. And so making sure the team knows how do we know when we're winning is really important. So like think of a North Star metric, and we can get into some facilitations and how we draw that out in a little bit. But that could be qualitative and quantitative, and there could be multiple metrics. There could be a customer-centric one. There could be one more of like a DORA metric around how often are we releasing code? What is our code quality? Could be an indication of winning as well. So it can take kind of different, forms, if you will.
Yeah, totally. And I think oftentimes starting with the more businessy customer metrics and rooting everyone in that. And then ultimately even looking at the more technical or operational metrics like DORA are a projection of long-term customer growth, right? If we're looking at revenue today and not focusing on operations, then it could be a sign that we're building up, it's a risk rather than a sign of building up maybe some debt that the team starts to wonder later, hey, this was a lot faster for us to be able to go after this new market and launch this new feature. What happened? And having the operational metrics in tandem and looking at those as well and making sure that you're going in, re-architecting, refactoring your code, and getting the benefits out of what measures like DORA tell you, I think protect that speed and agility in the future as well, so that you can go after generating the business and product metrics even in the long run versus in just the upcoming releases. What do you think tends to happen when we forget to have this conversation?
So when we forget to have this conversation, I think going back to kind of why are we doing this, but people will make their own assumptions about what winning looks like. So what success looks like, what they want to see from a customer. This can lead to vanity metrics, like people are clicking on this button or something, and nothing that's really moving the bottom line for the product and therefore the organization. If the team isn't aware of kind of what does it look like when we're winning, they also might try to do too much, and therefore prolong the time it'll take you to get to market and start learning. So you really want to, the purpose of how do we know when we're winning is to be able to answer that as soon as possible. That means getting to market as fast as possible, releasing that feature as fast as possible, and then learning from that, because it's likely going to take several iterations in order to do so.
So that one there is really key, where I think teams that I think we've come into that haven't had that conversation clearly tend to not have an intuitive sense around prioritizing a roadmap or a backlog.
Yeah.
Right. Or even like a target audience. And the more we find that we're able to go in and refactor that conversation, the more intuitively the prioritization tends to happen, where there is a convergence for the most part. And there's a few people that we need to get on board with where we go, which hills we conquer along the way, to continue with this sort of super competitive metaphor.
Yeah.
And yeah, when it's not happening, folks have they're making assumptions, and you've got a smart team and they're doing their best and they're using their best morality as opposed to having some level of guidance or guardrails from leadership in terms of, hey, this is where we're going to go first and second, or this is how we know we're winning. And then the team will come up with really clever hacks, if you will, or shortcuts. And I mean that in a positive way, around how we can try and move the needle on that first. And sometimes you may realize that this, the measurement or that North Star is validated or stress tested when the team starts to ideate around how to solve this. So if you've got a North Star metric in mind and you're not sure what the consequences will be of putting that in play, having that early conversation and ideation session will help you sort of know that, yep, most of this seems to fall in line and the team can fall in line with it, or, hey, this is actually causing some challenges. Fostering an engaged product organization and aligning them with the principles around lean, human-centered design, and agile will more than likely lead to successful business outcomes for your organization. But getting started or getting unblocked can be hard. This podcast is brought to you by the player coaches over at Integral. They help ambitious companies like you build amazing product teams and ship products in artificial intelligence, cloud, web, and mobile. Listeners to the podcast can head on over to integral.io/convergence and get a free product success lab. During this session, the Integral team will facilitate a problem-solving exercise that gives you clarity and confidence to solve a product design or engineering problem. That's integral.io/convergence. Now, back to the show. Let's maybe talk about the North Star metric exercise that we do with our clients. And then we'll talk next about whether it makes sense to have one metric or having a few metrics is okay.
Yeah. So for the North Star metric exercise, you want to do a little bit of visualization. So if we're in person, we're working with stickies and doing some silency work and collaborative work. If we're remote, we're using a Miro board in order to gather all of these thoughts. But the prompt is kind of imagine you're on a deserted island, you're stuck there. You care so much about this product, and every day you get one piece of paper from, the local animal that lives on the island, or a telegram or whatever, and it tells you kind of 1 to 3 metrics that will tell you how things are going back home and on that product. So with that prompt, you want to kind of prompt teams to take 5-10 minutes and think of all of the things, measurables, indicators, that might indicate to them that there is something going wrong and going well, with how things are going with the product.
Totally. And I think getting those, layering them back to which ones are important on a business level.
Yes.
Where folks outside of the product team will be able to relate to it. Those are things like profitability, revenue, market share, et cetera. And then also product level ones around engagement and other things that are more specific to your product to show that you are getting in front of the right audiences and those audiences find this useful. There is adoption. And then, of course, the health metrics that tell us that this is a sound, reliable engine that we're building as far as our technology and code base goes, and that we can count on it to scale with us, both in terms of when we add new users and we need more horsepower, but also when we add new complexity to the roadmap. And we want to be able to continue being fast and nimble as we are iterating through the product and building new things. So having those bucketed out, I think also helps with giving the team some level of compartmentalization.
Yeah, I think that in the team, from what we've seen, the team will naturally, depending on who's in the room, if you have engineers in the room or you have QA in the room or business in the room or sales in the room, they're gonna write down metrics that they're the most familiar with and how they see them impacting. We love this exercise, and we've done it when we've kind of kicked off an engagement with a client where we were building a dashboard for them. And so that we were able to aggregate and prioritize all of those, the most important metrics, and build almost a little mini roadmap to build that dashboard based on that unified conversation, and a dashboard that works for different members of the team as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example as well. And it also provides great conversation. There may be a business person that's worried about technical metrics, or the other way around. And in a more traditional environment, there may be like a, swim lane conversation of why are you asking about business things? You should go continue writing code. Or the other way around of like, hey, don't you worry about my technology, just worry about the business. And that's sort of a culture we want to move away from, and have the entire team feeling a sense of responsibility towards doing everything they can, jumping for loose balls to win. And this, it shows both things that people are optimistic about or excited about, as well as things people are concerned about. And I think being on the product team, it's really helpful for me to know what other folks on the team are excited or concerned about and want more clarity and visibility into. And it can be a good trust building exercise to have those conversations out in the open, where I say, hey, this is the architecture we're taking, and this is why I think we don't have to worry about scale, because it will scale horizontally for ABC reasons. And these are the specific constraint points in the architecture. And as long as we're below X number of users or whatever other kind of volume we're expecting. And then the business person also feels like they have a little bit more control in terms of all the way down to the architectural level of how their product is being built, and can course correct super early around, ooh, I'm glad you brought that up, because we may end up doing this partnership with this other distribution network that may add a lot more folks in this part of the product, but not that. And it spurs things that maybe don't come up initially that can come up later that kind of drive back to this.
Yeah. And you said something around kind of the team making some assumptions based on their different roles and viability and feasibility. And it reminded me of Teresa Torres uses this exercise, and we've certainly borrowed it around assumptions generation that I think is really effective in order to draw out everybody's unique perspective on the team and what their concerns are or what risks they see. And the prompt to do that is kind of what must be true with the product, with the market, with the technology, with the customer, in order for this release, this initiative to succeed. And letting everybody think about kind of the customer has to want it. It needs to be priced well. It needs to solve this problem. It needs to scale. Like all the small and large assumptions that you would make, the team can then share those with each other, and then you prioritize them based on impact and effort, to start to understand what do we know a lot about that we can just pop in the backlog and be like, hey, we're good with this. Really no big risks here. The team can run at it. Or what do we need to do a technical spike on? What do we need to do some discovery on? Who do we need to talk to in order to maybe gather more context around the more ambiguous problems and assumptions that the team is making?
Conversation number 2, how will we win? Thanks a lot, Bailey.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on the Convergence Podcast today. Subscribe to the Convergence Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your content. If you're listening and found this helpful, please give us a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and tell me what you think about what you heard today.